Hey everybody, it's Kathleen. If you're standing by on Facebook, thank you. We will be with you shortly. And if you're sitting on Zoom in the waiting room, we'll admit you right around 7 o'clock there and let you guys in with all your great questions. I'll see you in a minute. Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another Wildlife Wednesday. I'm so happy that you're here with us. I'm here in very rainy Calgary, and we have guests from the other side of the country, all the way over in Toronto. It's so good to have all of you with us. I'm going to give people a couple of minutes to sign in and also to catch up with us on Facebook. So while you're doing that, just want to point out that it's Pride Month, so happy Pride to all of our LGBTQ2S plus friends who are here with us. And it's also National Indigenous History Month, so very excited to have any of our First Nations, Inuit, and Métis friends with us as well. So we're here to welcome all of you. So yeah, just going to check on things here for a moment, make sure we've got everybody. Perfect. Terrific. Can you hear me all right? Can you give me a thumbs up or anything?
Yep, can hear you.
Yay. Great. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Wonderful. We'll keep an eye on people. We do have a waiting room set up on Zoom. So if you're joining us and there's a bit of a delay, just give me a moment and I'll make sure that I admit you into the Zoom room. If you're out there in Facebook land, thank you very much for joining us there too. We're going to watch there for questions as well. So if you do have questions, you can ask if you're in Zoom, or if you want to comment right on our page on the CMSRT Facebook page as well. So if you're just joining us, we are here for Wildlife Wednesday. The intention of tonight is to relax and hang out with a bunch of like-minded people who enjoy wildlife and learning from one another in a safe and positive environment. So it's kind of a crazy world out there. So we're hoping that this is a time when you can grab a snack, get comfy, and hang out with some new friends for the next little bit. So before we go too far, I'm going to introduce some very exciting guests to you, but I first want to introduce you to our volunteer, Anne, who is going to deliver our land acknowledgement tonight. Thank you so much, Anne.
No problem. Are we ready to do that?
Yeah, if you don't mind doing that, that'd be great. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the peoples of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot First Nation tribes of Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations tribes of Chiniki, Bears Paw, Wesley, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. The city of Calgary is also homeland to the historic Northwest Métis and to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. And I apologize for my mispronunciations. I'm still learning.
Oh, and thank you so much for doing that. And I actually have practiced in the past, and I noticed recently I'm really stumbling over my pronunciations, and I need to practice, but
I'm working on it.
No, but I think, and I hope that some of my Indigenous friends are out there who can back me on this, support that I've received in the past, that I think to try our best.
Mm-hmm.
Your heart, and I know that's where you come from. So
absolutely. And I think
you did great. So
I want to learn, and I don't mind being corrected if anybody has corrections. So anyway, back to you.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Anne. And I do want to just say a thank you to Michelle Scott at St. Mary's University. She is the director of Indigenous Initiatives, and we partner with St. Mary's University as well as Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society. We've been very blessed to have a relationship with Michelle and St. Mary's University here in Calgary. Michelle's been wonderful with providing us guidance, because we do want to honor the people that we are volunteering with, and remember the history that is here, and learn more about truth and reconciliation, as I think we all need to. And so I do want to thank her for her kindness and patience for things like when I can't pronounce things correctly, and I'm trying my best, but I appreciate everybody's patience. So thank you for that, Anne. So very excited. Calgary Migratory Species Response Team, we only started less than a year ago. And we were inspired by the work of Safe Wings Ottawa, but also of FLAP, who were posting pictures of birds that they were finding. And since that time, learning the incredible work of Fatal Light Awareness Program in Toronto, and seeing everything that has been accomplished by these incredible people for nearly 3 decades. Really, these guys have kind of become a little bit of rock stars in my eyes. I do wish I could get your autograph at the end of the session, but I'm really, really excited to welcome Paloma Plant and Michael Mesure to our Wildlife Wednesday. They are the co-founders of FLAP. So without further ado, if you guys would like to say hi, I will try to, I think I can only pin one of you at a time onto our main post here, but yeah, we're really excited to, are you pointing at Michael?
You're pointing
All
at
right.
me.
Yeah, we'll pin you up front there. There we go.
Okay.
That's awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. I am full of questions for you guys, but I know everybody else is too, and really looking forward to having you here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Everyone can hear me okay? Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you. You're a little bit choppy,
Yes,
but you're good. Yeah.
Well, I should prepare you. My connection isn't the greatest, so I may end up having to abandon doing this up through video and just calling in. I hope that doesn't happen, but I may have to do that, okay? First and foremost, and I believe I'm going to speak on behalf of Paloma, really appreciate this opportunity. And we're quite impressed with what you are doing out there in Calgary. We need more people like you, quite frankly. This is a missing link in a lot of pockets across Canada. And, the United States has really skyrocketed with individual groups focusing specifically on this issue. And it's only, I would say, over the past five years, say, that we're starting to see this catch on across Canada as well. So kudos to you guys for what you've got going out there in Calgary. And any way we can help, and this is one of the ways we can help by sharing ideas and successes and failures. We hope to achieve that for you tonight. Okay.
Thank you so much for saying that, Michael. It means a lot to hear that from you, and that bounces straight to our volunteers. I have to say a shout out to Dr. Scott Lovell at St. Mary's too, and to Melanie Whalen, who is able to join us tonight from there's 3 co-founders on our side, and we couldn't do what we're doing without them and all the awesome volunteers. So thank you for saying that, because we're really grateful for all the work that the volunteers are doing for us. So thank you.
You're welcome. Did Paloma want to say anything?
I'd like to just say it takes a lot of people to get this going, but it takes the really dedicated ones to keep coming back for it. And you have, in the short time you've been doing this, you've managed to raise the awareness in Calgary. You have managed to get what looks like a really good team of people associated with what you're doing. And I'm hoping that what we have learned along the way, you can use to shorten your journey to get to where we are now in Toronto. And hopefully that will, and we're always available to help and for questions and for just a giggle if you want to giggle. But that's what we're for. And it's a collective effort, not just with Calgary or Toronto. It's a collective effort across the globe where we can do it, because we found through our own work and through our own research that this isn't just a Toronto issue or Chicago or Baltimore or, wherever. It is a global issue, and it takes a global team and effort to really do something about it. And you have to start off, as we keep saying, a pain at a time. And that's what you have to do. So again, I echo what Michael said and say kudos to everybody there.
Thank you, Paloma. And I wanted to say to you personally as well, Melanie and I each took a lot of your own personal time when we first started, and you were very, very giving of your time. All of our volunteers are really familiar with your volunteer manual, which we're grateful for. And all of our forms and everything are borrowed from what? Oh, hello. Sorry, that would be Jelly Bean. So thank you so much, because there's a lot of background work that goes into this, and you saved us so much time and effort. So thank you.
That's what we're here for.
I had a couple of quick questions for you guys. I wonder if, oh, sorry, that's my fault. I muted when I thought it was unmuting. I was going to ask you just really fast, what would you hope to see each of us do when we leave this call? Is there one thing that you would hope for each person watching today to do one thing different?
Michael?
One thing different. Wow. Well, I don't know if this is something I can define as doing different, but it's one thing that I have learned that you have to do in order to get where you need to go or where you want to go. And you really have to, outside of persevering, you just, you'll be facing a lot of dead ends sometimes. You'll be butting a lot of heads with people, and it's so easy to become sort of disillusioned and fed up and walk away from it. And I just always try and turn that around to try and motivate me. And you know, what really helps me kind of reorient myself is keep on doing the bird rescue component. One thing that's really changed from when I first started to now is I'm doing all kinds of academic stuff. I'm reviewing papers and I'm writing emails, and I don't have the time that I used to be able to dedicate to the bird rescue. But if you can keep doing it, make that a constant part of your exercise, because it really does keep you rooted. It reminds you of why you're doing what you're doing. And sadly, there's no end to being reminded of the problem, because you'll always find birds, unfortunately. So just persevere. You have to be patient. Just keep your chin up and keep plugging forward. So a little bit different to what I think you were asking me, but I think that's an important message that I feel need.
That's awesome. I thought you were just going to say, mark your windows, but that was very deep. That was so awesome. That's great. And then I have one other quick one for you too, is more positive. I think that today there's so much going on in the world. And like you just touched on, we're constantly reminded of the birds that need help and what's going on, of course, socially in the world as well. With what you see, do you have a little glimpse of hope that we could take away with us too? And then I'll let you get into your talk.
Okay, I definitely can say something here, but I'll let Paloma start and see if she echoes the same thing I'm about to say. You go ahead with this one, Paloma.
Well, it's weird because what you just said completely covers what I was going to say, which leads me to think we've been working together for a really long time. We can come up with the same thing.
Yeah.
But for me, it's twofold. And I mentioned it to Kathleen earlier, walking down a street in Toronto, and I can look at a new building that is going up, and I can see that bird-friendly markers are being applied on that building. And they're being applied because of the work that FLAP and other groups have done over the years. They would not be there without that. But you can also go out, and this echoes what Michael said, you can have days where you go out and you find nothing but one dead bird after another, but then you find that one live bird. And people ask, well, you know, what are you making it? How are you making a difference to all these birds in general? Well, the windows with the right markers, the effective markers, are making a difference to the birds to come. But for you going out and picking up that one live bird that you found that day, you're making a difference to that bird today. So what you're doing today is affecting birds today, but it's affecting birds tomorrow and birds of the future. And we went from the just the rescue and rehab group to the advocacy group because we wanted to prevent this from continuing, and that's the only way to do it. And for me, that one live bird will never cancel 10 dead ones that I found earlier, but it reminds me of why we keep doing this. And one of our volunteers put it so beautifully, I don't want to keep picking up dead birds for the rest of my life. And that phrase has stuck with me for 20 something odd years.
Wow, that is really well said. Thank you for that, Paloma.
Can I add something as well? I think
Please.
This is important as well. I know I personally never sought to see FLAP grow to where it is today. There's so many things that happen along the road that sort of, they're windows of opportunity that just seem to present themselves to you. And you just got to go with it. You got to trust in it, and you got to build upon it. Keep your eyes peeled for these things all the time, because sometimes they're hard to see, but there's always opportunity to change things, right? And it's just something that I guess if you are to continue to do what you're doing in Calgary, I don't know quite how to explain this. Anyway. I'm going to gather my thoughts on that a little bit more, and we'll carry on with the next question, because I might have to bring myself back to that train of thought, okay?
No, I love that. That's so great. And the other quick thing I was thinking was, do you have one particular, like if you look back at all of the neat successes that you guys have had and inroads you've made, do you have, this could be hard question, but do you have a particular one that stands out that was like, oh my word, I can't believe that just happened, that you'll always remember?
Oh boy, I have a ton.
Do you?
I have a ton of them. And
Nice.
I could spend the whole night just talking on them. Seriously, like it's unbelievable some of the things that happen. I'll start with one. I was trying to impress a building operator at a specific office complex for years to just follow me around their building to get a sense of the birds that we were picking up at their site. And this particular operations manager just really wouldn't give me the time of day. And this went on for years. And I happened to arrive on this particular property when there was a fire drill happening. And everyone's outside the building, in front of the building, standing there chatting with each other, including this operations manager. And I grabbed her and I said, look, this is your opportunity. Please just follow me around your building. And she kind of went, oh, all right, all right. She couldn't say no because all she was doing was standing there. Walk around the building, and we were finding a few birds here and there. But then we turn a corner, and probably, I'd say, maybe 15 feet in front of us in a tree, perched a northern parula warbler. And behind that warbler was a mirrored window. And she was about to continue walking, and I was concerned she was going to flush the bird into the window. So I kind of stopped her and said, wait a minute. And I pointed to the bird in the tree, and she's squinting to see this bird. I said, let's just let the bird fly out of the tree. Wouldn't you know it, this bird took flight, flew towards us, lands on my shoulder within a foot of this property manager's nose. Exactly. Her jaw drops, her eyes pop out. She froze, and I'm like, I'm awestruck by this moment. And then probably took all of about 10, 15 seconds. The parula pops off my shoulder and flies away. That day, it changed this property manager's life. I swear, she became a totally different person. She went to great efforts to start to implement certain marker treatments on her building, educating tenants. And this is what we find. People are so detached, so busy with their lives, they miss the smell the roses moments, right? And that was a smell the roses moment for this particular person, and it just changed her life entirely. So that really stood out for me. And there's many more stories I can tell like that. Well, let's see what Paloma has to say.
I'm literally going to have to look up that species of bird. Is there anybody, I'm probably surrounded by people who know what that is, but I have no idea. I see Alan is probably like, oh yeah, I know that warbler. It's
a beautiful warbler.
Is it? Okay. And what was it called again?
Oh yeah. A northern parula.
Okay. Noted. I have to look that up. Thank you. That's an awesome one. I like that.
I have two moments. One, I was doing on-street training, and you know, when you're speaking to people and you're talking about all the different things that you watch for the traffic, you watch for people stepping on birds, you watch all these different things, and we talk about gulls. And I was in the lobby where we were meeting, and all of a sudden someone said, oh, there's a gull outside. And I had a look, and what had happened was a junco had hit the window, and the gull had come down immediately after the junco to get it, which is unfortunately very common in Toronto. So I dropped everything in the lobby, rushed outside, scared the bejeebers out of the gull, scooped the junco, and took him in. And I could not have scripted it better if I had paid both of these birds to do what they did. Because all the volunteers were standing there, it's just like, oh my God, we watched it happen. And the beauty of it was we got there quickly enough that the junco was shaken, but he was fine. We got to release him a few hours after that. And I still remember those volunteers talking about it, for about an hour or two afterwards is, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. The second incident, and this one is a personal one for me, is we had a really, really bad morning for brown creepers. And brown creepers are, when they come through in larger numbers. And we probably had about 15 or 20 of them all hitting the downtown area.
Oh,
We
wow.
managed all of them, all alive. And through the process of the assessment, it was determined that pretty much all of them were able to be released. So I personally did the release, and I got to do it on the way home. And I stood in my chosen spot, and I opened bag after bag after bag, and all these creepers were flying off in different directions. When the last one left the bag, I swear they were checking in with one another, because you could all of a sudden hear all these creepers talking. And my anthropomorphic mind was saying, it's this one telling him, I'm in this tree and this tree and this tree. And it's like they were having a conversation with one another. And honestly, the hairs on my arms stood up because it was so cool. And you walk away from that thinking, yes, that was a good morning. So those are two defining moments for me.
Oh, that like speaks so much to me too. I didn't know what a brown creeper was until our volunteers and Dr. Scott well, I didn't know until we actually happened upon one that was on the side of a building, and it was entangled in cobwebs. And so Dr. Scott was able just to pick it up in a birder's hold, and he was really worried about it. It didn't look good. And so that was one of the ones that we rushed before the sun was up over to Melanie's home, because she's a certified wildlife rehabilitator. So she can start treatment right away, which I think saved a lot of animals. Never knew what a round creeper was. They're so cute. And I got a text from her. She said, well, he flew and he seems to be fine. He's just entangled. We'll take him in and give him a really good check over. And I got to release that bird. So that was one of our first, that was really neat. We had a similar thing too. When we were checking a building downtown, we had our first volunteer orientation that was on the ground. And it was, sorry, I know this is not about me. It's about you guys, but I have to just share this.
That's okay.
We were doing, because we were doing our first volunteer orientation. I was really nervous and everybody was really keen. And we went all the way around our route downtown, and not a single bird was sighted, which is a good thing because we didn't want to find deceased birds. But I started to think, maybe we won't find any. And everybody's gonna be like, well, this program is unnecessary. And so we were all in this one big foyer outside looking at, there were tons of dragonflies and stuff. So there's all kinds of things for us to look at out of interest. And then suddenly we hear bird. And a bird struck, it was a red-breasted nuthatch, I think, right, Melanie?
Yep.
Yeah, and it had struck the building, and it literally fell to the ground right beside a group of brand new, freshly trained volunteers. And yeah, so it was able to be caught and treated and released. So I was like, oh, I'm so glad he was okay. It was like, okay, the program is still necessary here. So that will always stand out to me. Yeah, it's incredible. So incredible, all these moments.
It's funny. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing a little note here on my screen saying unstable connection. So I may cut out here. It's funny, and I think Paloma will speak to this as well. Good. When we're training people, and these people make an effort to come down and be trained, and they want to experience that moment with a bird, and you don't find birds, you find yourself, but at the same time, we all agree that that's what we want. We don't want to find any birds, but we can't help but feel we need to apologize because we want to motivate these people. We want them to come back. And quite often, if people don't have that moment, you may not keep them. They may move on. They may think this isn't a big enough issue. And that's the challenge with this issue is it's a hit and miss. I hate to kind of put it that way, but it is a hit and miss. You don't know what you're going to experience until you go down there. And each morning can be different, right? You can find no birds, one bird, 50 birds. It depends on the day. So And funny enough with a creeper, I have a very funny story about a creeper. In the late 90s, I was training this one guy, just like you with your team of new volunteers. We went around the downtown core together. We didn't pick up a single bird. And he was about to leave. And I was apologizing. I'm really sorry you didn't have that opportunity to see a bird this morning. And as I'm saying that, I feel something drop on my head. And I thought a bird did a dump on my head. And this guy starts laughing his head off. And I reach into my hair, and it was a brown creeper that collided with my head that morning.
No
the
way.
only bird we found was one bird which landed on my head. Yeah, and I pull it out of my hair and we put it into a bag. We put it into a bag and we take it to a release site and on we went. Anyway, that was a funny moment for me.
So is that like a head strike? It's not like a window strike.
I don't know. That's what he was laughing at. It collided with my head.
We call Michael is known as the urban birdman for a reason.
Yeah. He's the which man?
He's the urban birdman.
Urban birdman.
Yeah, that's his Twitter handle.
Okay. Yeah, they obviously are attracted to you, Michael. They know who to go to for help. That is for sure. Oh, those are such great stories. And apparently brown creepers are definitely a theme. Definitely a theme.
Yeah,
I'm just going to see if, does anybody, if you've got any questions, I'm going to check Facebook here really quickly and see if there's any questions. And then Paloma, I'm not sure. We mentioned yesterday, we got to talk yesterday, which was so great. Did you happen to, did you want to do slides, or would you like to keep casual questions, or what do you feel like? Because this really is just, like I said, it's for everybody, for you guys especially, to do what you would like to do as well.
The slides that we have are geared more towards people who want to know a little bit about the issue. My guess is the people that are listening in already know about the issue, perhaps. I'm not sure how many are your volunteers versus how many are new to this issue. I mean, we only have a few slides that really very generalizes the topic so that you can see what is the problem during the night, what is the problem during the day. And I guess part of our focus, as you know, is advocacy and education, and getting community science involved in everything that we're doing, because collectively, Calgary, Toronto, you know, all the different cities, we can accumulate data, but you need the input from the global community to really make it that global component. So I'm not sure if you wanted us to talk about that because that gets everyone involved in it, or how you wanted us to do it.
Yeah, well, I think that if you've got some slides like that, I think that would be terrific, because what we're hearing more and more, there's people all over the world who are interested. We have one of our volunteers, she's moved back home to Ireland. She's looking into maybe programming closer to home there. And we have talked actually quite a bit about that, because I saw so much of our focus is on the high rises and the skyscrapers. And that's where I started out focusing too. But the more we're learning, it's not the high rises that are the hugest issue. So these programs really could be useful anywhere in the world where there's glass, short buildings, tall buildings, and so on. So yeah, do you want to do your slides and then?
I can do that. I'll just put it to share the screen, which I think you have to approve.
Okay. Let's see. There we go. I've added so that multiple can share. And here we go.
Okay, so Michael, do you want to do the narration and I'll just do the slides, or how do you want to do this?
Let me first get off. No, I'm not on. Okay, you can hear me, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Well, we can do a tag team here, Paloma, because why don't you kind of start, and I can interject if there's anything to add, okay?
Okay, so basically we're talking about the bird window collision issue. And when you look at presentations or you talk to people and you ask the question if anyone's ever seen or heard a bird hit a window, I would say anywhere from 90 to 95% of the people that are in that presentation or in that room will put their hand up. And we always tell people to look around you because you might think you're the only one that has a bird strike when in fact you're likely to be one of many. And it happens more often than people think. In fact, it happens to the tune of about 25 million conservative numbers in Canada, which jumped to about 1 billion birds a year across North America alone. Never mind what happens, you know, in other countries anywhere else. So it's a staggering number. And when FLAP was first founded, as Kathleen said, it was considered to be an issue at night with lights left on. But over years, we have found that the bulk of the birds that collide now collide during the daytime and collide at low residences or low-rise buildings, people's homes, cottages, even transparent bus shelters, you know, things like that. So it's an important thing to look at. And quite frankly, if ever there's a glass panel somewhere, there's always the possibility of a bird striking it anyway. A little bit about background history for FLAP, as you know, we've been around for the longest time in terms of groups. Our mission is to safeguard the migratory birds in the urban environment through a number of initiatives. And
sorry, Paloma, I'm just going to interrupt you. I think that I think your slides are not showing right now.
Oh,
So I think maybe,
okay.
yeah, I wasn't sure if you're doing a preamble to your slides, but if you just check your share screen, and then you may have to just select the slideshow.
I thought I had it, and
We see some photos. We see some awesome photos, like of your layout and such, which are incredible.
this is
There we are.
There we go.
Can you see it?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, that's weird. Okay.
Perfect.
So basically, FLAP has a number of initiatives, and in fact, our staff wear many, many hats, as I'm sure you found out with Calgary. But whether it's guidelines, policy, and standard development, and advocacy and education, those are two of our biggest components because that is the way of the future. Educating people now so that they can save birds in the future. The data collection and research that we have is extensive, and we get requests from across the globe, not just for the data collection in terms of numbers, but in terms of species. And also people use a lot of the bodies that we do find for a number of different projects as well, from muscle mass studies to wind turbine studies. They're used in art collections, and of course they constitute a large number of the specimens that are often at museums, the Royal Ontario Museum being the main repository for our birds. And of course, rescue and rehabilitation is where we were first started. So since then, you know, we've encompassed a whole bunch of new different things, and we'll continue to do that. In case there's people out there that don't know this, and I apologize if I'm preaching to the choir, and you'll have to excuse me, I have a mosquito in my face.
And that's quite okay, Paloma, except for the mosquito. We had a big discussion about mosquitoes last night. I did offer to send to some of ours, but yeah.
No.
Lots of our volunteers are brand new to us as well, who have just received their own orientation. Plus, we probably have other people too who don't know. So feel free, and plus it's a great refresher for those of us who, like for me, I probably think I know some of these things, but there's definitely more that we can learn from you. So feel free to speak to anyone. That's awesome. Okay. Thank you so much.
The lights at night was how we first founded, which is where part of our name came from. But what people don't realize, it's not just lights on buildings, it's also event and decorative lighting. It could be a communications towers, and you can see all the, you know, the birds flying around the towers. And if you look at the two beams of light, which are at ground zero in New York City, which unfortunately happens to fall right into the height of migration in New York City when they have the beams for the 9/11 memorial. If you look very carefully, you can see the little flecks in those lights, and those are actually birds that are trapped in those beams and reluctant to leave them. And whether it's this type of lighting or other lighting, lights can confuse birds and cause a lot of problems for them. If you go beyond,
if I may add,
yeah,
I just want to add something. The image on the right-hand side of your swirling around the lines there, that's actually in Dundas Square in Toronto. That was, and I'm still trying to remember who in fact took that photograph, but it is a perfect image about how birds can become entrapped in brightly lit sources. That's it.
Okay. Again, urban centers are a big problem for birds at night, especially in the migratory corridors or the routes that they're taking. And the buildings that we come across on nights where there's low cloud cover, there's inclement weather, there's fog, there's drizzle, there's rain, that causes the birds to fly at lower altitudes, and that's when the buildings are a problem. However, the daytime issue, and this is the one that is the biggest challenge to get people to overcome, because everybody wants to point the finger at the tall towers with lights left on at night, but daytime issue, the numbers are more numerous and they're certainly more lethal than the nighttime strikes. And whether it's a commercial building, whether it's a reflective window, whether it's an entire complex of buildings, or whether it's someone's home, daytime strikes are the worst kind for birds. And over years, our research has shown that it's the homeowner that needs to do something, not necessarily just the commercial owner. And our focus for the last few years has been trying to convert the homeowner, for lack of a better way of putting it, into doing something on their home. And the brochure that we developed, which is the Home Safer Birds brochure, is now in its second printing, has been distributed across the globe. Right now it's in English and French. We hope one day to make it English and Spanish and translate it to other languages too, but it's still a very popular and very effective education tool that we provide for people. And we've given it out to rehab centers, anyone that's willing to dish them out to people. Michael, do you want to add anything in there?
Well, the homeowner brochure, it's not your standard brochure. This is one sort of model that FLAP adopted a long time ago. We try to do some really creative designs with our literature, and we encourage you to do the same, because we are bombarded with information on a day-to-day basis. And if you don't stick out, you could be missed. So our very first brochure was in the shape of a bird of prey, an origami, and it would fold into that unique shape, and it would be covered with all the various information. The homeowner brochure, if you haven't seen it yourself, is in the shape of a home. It adopts that origami shape again, where it unfolds into a series of homes. And even though this costs a little bit more, people tend to keep these brochures because they're different, they're unique, they're creative, and in some cases, people give them to other people rather than throw it into a recycling bin. They give them to other people to read. And so less waste is going on, and there's a great deal more mileage out of a single piece of literature. So I just would recommend sort of adopting that same approach on your end. Be creative in your production of brochures and literature.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. And I think one thing we've thought about too, and we do thankfully have some creative volunteers who are much better with this sort of thing than I am, who are drafting some. So we will definitely keep that in mind. And one thing that we really want to get out is a multilingual information pamphlet for security and anybody that's working on any of the commercial properties, because people do speak Punjabi and Cantonese, and we want to, these are the folks that we run into and want to be able to sort of bring them aboard to help us out to watch for birds and what to do, and to be inclusive of the information that we have too. So that's awesome. Yeah, we'll have to look into that for sure. Thank you.
And I can also offer something here, something to consider. There's always an opportunity to partner in some of our existing brochures. If we do another printing run, we should talk about maybe doing a joint printing run so that you can also circulate it with ease out in your area. So we can talk about that, but that's worth considering, okay?
That would be super amazing. Thank you. Since we don't yet have funding, that would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
One thing people need to be aware of is the strike zone. And again, for the daytime issue, we get a lot of questions. I own a 50-story building. Do you want me to put markers on all my 50 floors? And you really don't need to do that. The strike zone is really to the height of the mature tree canopy. And of course, that does vary depending on where you live, because I know trees in BC can go up to more than 20 meters. So what we designed was sort of like a rule for the different birds in the areas that they are striking. So if you look, you can see the hummingbirds on the lower level, then you work up your way up to the sparrows, the thrushes, the woodpeckers, all the way up to the top of the tree canopy where the vireas and the tanagers are. And this is something as a rehabber that has been a big issue for me, because many birds that end up in rehab centers, and I'm sure Melanie knows this, they're brought in by cats. And the homeowner, their cat goes out, they bring in a bird, the bird is still alive, they take it from their cat, they take it to a rehab center, and it's supposed to end there. But what may be missing from the equation is the bird may have hit a window before the cat got it, which is why the cat got it in the first place. Because if you look at some of the species that end up in rehab centers caught by cats, you're looking at warblers, you're looking at woodpeckers, you're looking at the grosbeaks and the flycatchers, which typically are not in cat territory when the cat is outside on the ground, which is why it is important to remember, you know, that component of the rehab side of it. And again, I'm sure Melanie must see plenty of birds that are brought in by cats or mangled by cats even, but it is something to consider when you're looking at the tree canopy. And we work well with, we hope to work well with landscapers and other people who are designing landscaping, because if you design a building that is bird friendly, you want to make your landscaping bird friendly too, and have it in conjunction with one another. So it's something to consider, which a lot of people don't realize. Michael, do you want to add anything? Michael?
Well, yeah, there's a other side to that coin. And we learned this from sorry, I'm here. Can you not hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
No sound coming out?
We can hear
You're
you.
okay now.
Yeah, you're good.
I may have to call in.
You can hear, we
Okay.
can hear you. I'm not sure if you can. There we
One
go.
of the things that we learned from one of the two lawsuits that we were witnessing is during the first trial, one of the things that came up in the courts is that because of the lush, beautiful landscape that surrounded this particular complex, it was drawing in greater concentration of birds there because of that greenscape that surrounded the building. Well, wouldn't you know it, almost the very near went about marking all the trees on the property to be cut down in an effort to demonstrate to the courts that they were doing all they could to mitigate the threat of bird collisions at their structure. And this is the exact opposite of what we want to see happen. You know, if anything, we want to see more greenscaping, not less. But it can be a knee-jerk reaction to those people that are they just want to get this headache off their shoulders. So we try to downplay the landscape in our messaging. Even though it is important to plant the right plants to not attract birds, it's more important to treat the windows. That's just very important for you to carry that message forward when you're out there doing your thing, okay?
Yeah, that sounds, I can't believe that they would they would do it that way. Well, we'll just cut your trees down. Yeah.
The one thing I did note, and again, this is something we talked to new volunteers about, even if you were to take down every tree surrounding a property that it's a commercial building, that's nothing to do with the trees across the road that are still reflected in their glass, or you can see a tree through a transparent or adjacent window that is not, that again has nothing to do with that property. So you're really not solving your problem unless you do something with the glass itself. So it's just another way of looking at it.
Wow.
So okay, sorry? Okay.
Oh, I was just like, wow. Yeah, absolutely. And plus even just to reflect the sky as well.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so talking for those that, again, I apologize if you already know the topic, but for those that don't, why do birds collide? It's because they see the reflection of trees or shrubs, or sometimes the sky. They also see plants on the inside of the glass, and they want to try and get there because birds like their comfort zones. They like the green space, the greenery, and that's what they're heading for. Or they often see adjacent windows through transparent glass, and most people know birds fly from A to B in the shortest time. So they would not think to go around the glass, they would want to go right through it. One of the things that we talk about in dispelling myths, and this is something that we come across all the time because a lot of people spend a lot of money trying to do something that really isn't going to work very well. And we wanted to come up with a few deterrent methods that don't work. And the plastic owls went from being just a plain plastic owl to get really swanky with a head that rotates in an effort to make it seem more realistic. But birds generally don't have the same concept when it comes to plastic owls as we do. And we found that they really were not very, very effective at all. So that's what these guys seem to think of the plastic owls that were put out. When it comes to other things that don't work, and this is probably the one that most people recognize the most, it's the bird of prey decal. And typically you put one up on a window or two up on a window, but the rest of the window is still exposed. And to be the most effective, you would need to pepper your entire window with some type of marker. And this, we've never yet seen anyone do that. So it's always good to know what really works and what doesn't. And just to give you an idea for your home, and again, the focus is on homes, a window that could be transparent, perhaps say in the morning, as the light conditions change throughout the day, that same window could potentially be reflective in the afternoon. And that could be, for example, a time when more birds are likely to collide at that location during that time. So we often tell people, if you're not sure about your house, go outside from sunup to sundown, look at your windows, do an assessment on them, and see what you see in the window. Because if you see trees reflected, birds are going to see the same thing, and that's when there's going to be problems occurring. We did run a little contest recently called Make Windows Bird Safe, and we had some really cool suggestions. And quite frankly, we suggest to people, be creative, be as imaginative and creative as you want. But whatever you do, make sure you put it on the outside of your window so that it's the most effective location for that. And Michael was mentioning our Home Safe brochure, and there it's in all its French and English glory. So you can see what it looks like in terms of the information that's provided. That's it for the slideshow. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. It's nowhere close to the in-depth presentation that we typically use, but hopefully there's something in there that somebody can take away and pass on to someone else if need be. And if they want brochures, they can contact us to get them.
Yeah.
So that's it for the show. So I'll stop sharing and we're going to go back to Kathleen.
Let's see. Oh, lucky you guys.
It's the Northern Parula.
Oh, yes. Alan's Northern Parula as his profile.
Let me see.
That's the Northern Parula.
How do I want to, hang on. See if I can highlight that. How come I can't highlight his picture there? I hope people can see it. I've done the gallery view. Hopefully that comes up. Are you guys all able to see that? Okay.
Yeah.
That
I
is
can see it.
gorgeous. I saw Ellen put up a bird. I thought, oh, the
Yeah.
chat. Told you you'd find it. There you go. That's beautiful. Yeah, I think that through volunteering, there's so many species of birds that I never knew about. We talked already about the brown creeper, and there was a Blackburnian warbler that I met when I found it passed away in the rain. You couldn't even see it. So you're looking over the sidewalk and there's just a tiny little blip, and went over, and so it's an awful way to get to know some of the species when you find them that have passed. But our volunteers have also rescued so many, like what Paloma was mentioning earlier, mourning warblers, and gosh, well, a lot of the gang is on here. So if you've got stories, feel free to unmute and share them as well. Yeah, I just saw Carol is heading off. Good night, Carol. I think that your point too about the stickers, the decals on the window is one of my greatest frustrations, because I feel like everybody wants to do the right thing and we really want to help. And even myself, I had one decal on each of my windows. And it wasn't until I started organizing this program, I had taken the week off work. So very similar to COVID, I was home at a time when I normally wouldn't have been. And a bird struck my own window. And that's when, I knew that they don't work. So, I don't know.
I can add something to that. Again, I'm just going to have to check to make sure you can hear me. Can I be heard okay? Okay, good. One of the challenges that I'm confident you've already bumped into, the biggest challenge you have at creating change, especially in the corporate environment, but it also makes its way into single family dwellings as well, is the costs to deal with it and the aesthetics. We are so used to seeing glass the way we see it, and quite frankly, we have this fascination that we gravitate toward it in many cases, that the moment you suggest you have to treat your glass with these markers, a lot of people start to turn deaf ears your way. They're just not willing to make that change. And one of the perfect examples I can give you came from a homeowner. Am I gone?
No, you're good. I think Paloma's just setting up to show us something now.
Looks like
you're good. I think Paloma, you're sharing your screen, but I think she's getting set up to share something with us.
We got great. So we received a phone call from a lady. This is a number of years ago, leading up to the Christmas holidays, and it took this lady probably about 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, to gain her composure and stop crying on the phone, because she had yet again experienced another bird that died by colliding into her patio window. And she went about to explain that she's had it. She will do anything to resolve this. Tell me what to do, I'll do it. So I went about explaining to her the various steps you take. And then I noticed her tears had stopped. And then she interjected. She said, listen, I really appreciate what you're offering here, but I can't do what you're suggesting. I have guests coming over on Friday. So this lady, who was in tears at the beginning of the conversation, realized that these markers you're suggesting I put on my windows, I have to see. Therefore, I'm not interested in dealing with this problem anymore. And this, as I said, this happens right down to the homeowner, right up to the corporate structures. The aesthetics of a building is very, very important to everybody. And this is why we're trying to find creative ways to come up with markers that are either less visually obtrusive or aesthetically appealing. And one thing that I have always said, from before I even got into this, I was actually seeking to being an architect. And when I was going through the beginning stages of learning architecture, I always saw glass as a canvas. I never saw glass as a sole stark surface like we see it. I always saw it as an opportunity to treat it individually, and as I said, treat as a canvas. And that's very much how you have to approach this. Take the opportunity to come up with something that is aesthetically appealing, that enhances the building itself, while at the same time meets the criteria of what is necessary for birds to see that marker.
I love that, that glass is like a canvas, because it shows an opportunity. And we see all over where, you know, we were fortunate to have Paul from Feather Friendly on a couple of weeks ago, and some of the projects that he's done with his company and team around the world, which actually enhance these beautiful buildings to make them even more extraordinary, and also saving them. And I think when companies realize how, I think it's almost like wearing a seatbelt back in the 70s, for those of us who remember the 70s, where at first it was very foreign to people, and it was a lot more fun to slide around on the back of the super wide Ford LTD backseat leatherette, until it became the norm. And then it was, you know, you really frowned upon friends who were dumb enough not to drive without a seatbelt. And so I'm really hoping that the more people who will do this, you'll see a building be like, how is it that you don't have treatment? So hopefully more people will have a change in attitude, and homes too.
Yeah.
There are so many beautiful ones. And I think one of the questions that was asked of Paul that would be applicable, I'm sure, to other companies too, that we're not just, we love Paul and Feather Friendly. So I mean, but if there's other products that will work for people to mark their windows, awesome. But they can do so many things to enhance and basically advertise their business and show themselves as being really responsible at the same time, which can never hurt their image, that's for sure. Paloma, are you going to show us some pictures? Is that what you're showing us?
That's right.
That's what I've been doing as you've been talking, just so that you can see the different products. And we've got the window dots, which is feather friendly, they were placed on a home. And the one thing people are afraid of is they're not going to be able to see out of that window when they put the dots up. And this particular image, you can see the dots, but actually they don't take away from the background at all. So you can see through them, you can see the feeders, you can see the greenery. It really doesn't make any difference to what you're doing. So it's a way for people to see just what they look like. And let's see if I have the one I was hoping to. This is one that was actually put up at a building outside of Toronto. This is one of the first products that was put up there. And this was on a second story flat roof, except for this one area, which was an education room. And it went around it wrapped around the entire room, except for one window that was left untreated. And I happened to work in this building, and that one window took out 2 great crested flycatchers. One in that window. And after that, they finished putting it up. But it was one of the first window products available, and it was an educational facility at the time. So it's again another example. This particular window was a school on.
Paloma, sorry to interrupt, Paloma.
Sorry.
Paloma.
Yeah.
Were you actually trying to open those images? Because the images weren't opening up on the display. All we're seeing is your array of pictures in your file. If you,
That's weird.
there's a step you might be missing to actually open.
Okay.
You may have to do a fresh share with each one. So if you open it and then go to the share screen button and then select the picture.
Right.
For that.
That's where you can, okay, well, let's try. If I do this,
Let's see.
can you see that?
No, not yet. It hasn't changed yet. So if you try opening the picture, and then on your share screen, if you look at the options that are down on
screen sharing. Well, let me try new share.
Yeah, I have to refresh it. I learned that the hard way myself.
Can you see it now?
We're all learning this, aren't we? It's a new world.
That's okay. I think we'll be okay.
Well, you know what? We'll just, if you can't see them, there's no point me doing it.
That's okay. I don't know though, if you do, it should show, like if you go to your share screen spot, and then it may show the individual image, and then hit share again. Try that. No rush. We're all.
You share.
Well,
There.
I can tell a story while she tries.
Yay, we love stories. Yes.
Okay, so, and I think I spoke with you, Kathleen, about this. Paloma was talking about how there's this fear that the markers on the windows will impede people's view, and they resist it because of that. Funny enough, again, the first of the two precedent-setting lawsuits, the building operator, midway through the trial, ended up treating their windows, two of their three mirrored structures, with feather-friendly markers. They put a damage control program in place to prepare for all the complaints that they were expecting from the tenants, from the business associates, from the guests going in their corporate plaza. They were prepared for this. Up go the markers. Not a single phone call, not a single email came in. They went about doing a random interview of various tenants in their building, asking them, what do they think of these markers? And the answers were, what markers? They didn't even notice them. So that we all seem to carry at first, that we believe we're going to see these ugly markers on the windows. And quite frankly, you don't see them. And if you do, you just get used to them and you see beyond them like a day or so after. So it's just something that you have to, it's the process that you're going to experience in talking with people.
Well, and you for sharing something interesting too, that you found that having the markings closer together, I think this was on the Talk with Paul, the closer the images are together, the more your eye learns to ignore them. Is that right? Did I get that right? Like if you're in a more standard, yeah, you can correct me because I'm still learning.
Sure. So the original research concludes that vertical lines should be spaced no greater than 4 inches apart. Horizontal lines should be spaced no more than 2 inches apart. But what they found when we did the test installations at Concilium Place, we brought the vertical line spacing to 2-inch spaces apart, and it created a grid so that the dots were anchored equally in height and width in corners. The moment they did that, the marker became that much more difficult to see. That isn't the marker I'm talking about. There, that marker.
Yay, it works,
You've all
Paloma.
seen it before. The markers become less visually obtrusive. Yeah, you did it. When they were even moved in closer to each other, they became more effective, but are less visually noticeable to the eye because the eye doesn't see a pattern. It doesn't recognize a pattern. Where with 4-inch spacing, you saw bars, you saw lines, up and down your window. So it just worked more effectively, and at the same time was less visually noticeable. Yeah, that's the feather friendly. That would be the DIY tape of feather friendly.
And I noticed too that one of our volunteers said that he's bought the feather friendly. I also just ordered the feather friendly, that particular one too, to try. And they look great. I think they look really great on the windows. So that's great, Paloma. You got that to work. Thank you. We're back to thumbnails though, but maybe you're able to open the Earth Rangers one because that one is quite beautiful.
Yes.
I'm trying.
Now,
while you're about Earth Rangers.
Yes.
Go ahead. Just as Paloma was saying, she used to work there, and we worked with a combination of, it was the Chad Foundation and Toronto Wildlife Center and the team of architects that were designing this facility. And they came up with this treescape pattern because the building itself was sort of nestled in the woods. And they wanted to carry that theme of the forest onto the building itself. And it's a custom pattern. It isn't something that you can go and buy off a shelf, right? And that's the beauty of, just like I said earlier, You treat it like a canvas, be unique. It's unbelievable what can come out of it when you apply your imagination to it.
100% agree. 100% agree. And I'm looking at the,
Yeah.
we had an earlier question too. Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I don't want to ruin your chain of thought there.
No. I want to hear your next question.
Well, I was going back in the questions on Facebook, and a couple of the folks were mentioning about the thumbnail. So thank you so much for pointing that out to us. We've got that, I think. And let's see. Yeah, there was a question earlier on being the pioneers. How and why did you start Flap? Now, I think you touched on part of this, but I think even when I was talking to Paloma last night, she mentioned a really gave me more information on how that all came to be, which was pretty cool. Would you mind sharing that story? Not to put extra pressure on you to recall our exact conversation last night, but
I don't know if she even heard that. Did you hear that, Paloma?
Sorry, I thought Kathleen, I thought you were addressing Michael.
Oh, kind of to both of you, I guess,
No.
because yeah, we had that interesting discussion yesterday, and you were telling me about how you came to come together. That and I thought that was really neat. If you are not minding sharing that now, just so you know, we still see your thumbnails on the share. Oh, now we saw a larger one. It did flip back there.
I don't know what's going on with it, but can you see this door?
I just see the thumbnails. Yeah.
Yeah, just thumbnails.
I got it.
I'll start.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll let Paloma tell the story. So my original background was I was an art gallery and antique shop owner. How I ended up here always fascinates me. But one thing for sure is I've always been fascinated with birds. There was always some sort of calling there. I didn't know where it was going to take me. And as I said, I never knew I would end up here. But I was just told by those lit towers at the night. This was back in 1989. And that very next morning, I dragged my friend down with me into the city. One bird after another were birds laying on the sidewalk. And I just disappeared into the night. I left my friend in the dust, and I just was picking up birds and putting them in my pockets. And it was just such a shocking eye-opener. But I really didn't realize that there needed to be some form of a formal approach taken until, and you may have even read it on the website, that one moment of a common yellowthroat that escaped from a paper bag inside my vehicle. And if you'll probably experience this from time to time. These birds escape in your car and they're trying to find a way to get out of the glass, through the glass to freedom. But this particular yellowthroat flew and perched itself on my rearview mirror. It began to sing inside my vehicle. And I to this day, I don't know how I didn't drive right off the highway. But within about 10, 15 seconds of hearing this bird sing and me being in awe of this bird, it fluffed its feathers out and it dropped dead in my lap. And I always go back to that moment, and I would have to say that that's probably one of the key experiences that keeps me doing what I'm doing today. There's no if, and, or buts about it. It just stuck with me, and it's etched in my brain, and it just reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Wow. That is really something. I don't know. I don't even have words. That is something. No. Paloma, do you have thoughts on that too?
My start was I was working in wildlife rehab.
And I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you one moment. Do you mind unsharing your screen for a second, and then we'll see you guys a little bit better. Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, continue on. Yeah.
I was working in wildlife rehab, and we were getting huge numbers of migrant birds from specific locations in downtown Toronto. And I decided to go and check what was happening and why. And this was in 1987. And I was like Michael, I got down there and there were birds everywhere. The street cleaners were walking by and just sweeping them up, not caring if they were live or dead. And I started going on a more regular basis, started bumping into other people, Michael and a bunch of other people that were actually doing the same thing. And we got together in 1993 and flat hatched later on in that year, and we've been going ever since.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I just want to ask the folks who are on Zoom, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but we have some of our super awesome volunteers on here. We have Mel on here and Alex, and we've got new volunteers like Julia and Catherine and yeah, so do any of you have some questions or anything you'd like to share? I'll have that awkward elevator music while we let people decide. I should mention we've got TJ on the line. I'm not going to force you to speak, TJ, but I'm not sure if you saw, but we had we did a layout similar to what you guys do, only on a much smaller scale because we don't get as many birds as you do in Toronto. But we realized that we didn't have anything to represent visually all the ones that we did not pick up and the ones that were released. So TJ actually went ahead and did some gorgeous sketches that were so good that we ended up having a little art show at the Wild Bird store. So it's pretty neat, the different skills that your volunteers come up with. Yeah, really beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Neat. Well, if I can say, we find at FLAP a tremendous number of the volunteers that come to us seem to come from an arts background to some degree. They come with some significant talent. And I think that art is such an important aspect of the type of tools you can use to reach people. It's the universal language, right? That everyone understands. And it's just so important to build on that. And I would like to see those pictures actually. I don't know if you can do that now, but it'd be nice to see these images that you put together for that display. Did we lose Kathleen? I don't see Kathleen anywhere. Can you hear me, Paloma?
I can hear you. I'm not sure where anyone else is. I can see other people. There's Kathleen.
Our host is, there, she's back.
There you are.
Sorry about that. I'm glad it wasn't all of you. It just sort of disappeared all of a sudden, and I wasn't out getting wine or anything, I promise. But it sounds like you did great without me. You probably don't even need me here. So I'm sorry, what did I miss?
Oh no, you weren't gone that long. You didn't miss much.
I just have a question. I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about funding, how you guys sorted that out in your early days, and how do you get your funding today?
Right. Okay, well, I'll start. Funding does not, and will never come easy. The bottom line. In fact, it wasn't until I think it was 1999 that FLAP was able to actually start to hire. I started out as the first staff, and I started out part-time. So it took 7 years to get to the point where we were even able to raise money to start to fund a staff position. Now, we've grown. Believe me, right now we have 3 staff, but believe me, we could have a lot more staff to keep on top of the volume of work and opportunities that present themselves. But we're limited to the money that we can raise. Our sources come from three main areas. It's private foundations, government grants, and individual donations. Sometimes there's some corporate support there as well, but we tend to not gravitate toward. We tend to not look for too much corporate support. We tend to rely mainly on the government grants and individual giving. It's taken a long time for us to build up a good base of donors, individual donors. You build a mailing list and build relationships with people. So it's not easy. It really isn't easy. And it's in and of itself its own job. And this is one of the frustrating parts of being an NGO is there's so many opportunities for financial support, but many of them will not support staff. And sadly, if you expect to run a program efficiently, there's only so much you really can do on a volunteer basis for so long. If you're going to grow, you need to introduce staff as well. And it's one of the most difficult things to raise money for. But hey, we're doing something right. We're doing something right. We've been able to retain 3 full-time staff since Paloma was the last person that came on board full-time. And when was that, Paloma? When did you start full-time again?
8 years ago, just over
2012.
Yeah.
Right. And look, it's no fun because every year it's right down to the 11th hour. Are we going to have a deficit, right? And you put so much work. Sometimes you're spending more time doing reports from the grant foundations you got than actually being able to go out into the street and do the program work that you raise money for. So it's crazy. It can be absolutely crazy, but it's just the game you have to play. It's simply the way the process works, and you just got to stick with it.
Yeah, for sure. We've had a few very generous personal donations, which are super appreciated. Oh, good, TJ. We were messaging TJ to see if he wouldn't mind sharing some of his sketches with us. And
That's
TJ, would you mind telling us about what you're
Wow.
sharing, TJ? You've got the.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Disappeared.
I'm trying to figure this out too.
Yeah, that's okay. We're all learning. There's zero judging from this end. It's such a new world that we're figuring this out. The bird that.
Okay. So the one that's being shown right now was it like a belted kingfisher?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. That's one of the birds that were caught.
Yeah.
What was the backstory of this one, Kathleen? I forgot.
This one was actually really interesting. Of all of the ones that were rescued in the fall of 2019, this sadly is the only one that was not able to be rehabilitated to be released. All of the other live animals that were taken into Melanie and her team at Calgary Wildlife Rehabilitation Society, all of those were rehabilitated and released. But this one, sadly, I'm not sure if Melanie, she messaged that she was having difficulty hearing because of some noise upstairs, but you're welcome to tell the medical story on this guy. But what I thought was really neat on the volunteer side is we had 2 more experienced volunteers who were helping out with some new volunteers. Actually, it was one experienced one who had a new group with her downtown, and it was about 10 or 10:30 at night. I got the call that, oh, we need something bigger than a regular kit. And I got to learn how big a kingfisher is. They're pretty big birds. And it was actually the security guard had seen it, and the security guard saw our team, went over and grabbed the team and took them over to help the birds. So it was a really nice collaboration with that building downtown that helped out. It's really nice. Yeah. And they were able to help him. And yeah, Melanie, tell us on the medical side, because you did so much work to try to help him, but it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, Unfortunately, hopefully you can hear me. We just had a flood here, so we've got a whole bunch of fans and banging and stuff happening right now.
Oh, dear.
So it's a little distracting. I'm not sure how much you guys can hear it, but yeah. So this guy came in and unfortunately had a pretty bad respiratory infection. So we did try to treat the infection, but it was pretty bad. So we think he potentially had the respiratory infection before he had the strike. And it could have potentially interfered with him. Yeah,
Right.
he was found grounded. So we assume we don't know that he had a strike, but he was grounded right beside a building, so we presumed he did. But yeah, unfortunately,
Right.
we threw all the antibiotics we could at him and tried to treat him, but he didn't make it.
That's too bad.
Thank you for
That's too
trying, though.
bad.
That's for sure.
I
It
have
happens.
an image. I have an image I'd like to share here. That is a kingfisher as well. That tells. Let's see if I can be successful at this. Okay, let's go share. Okay, can people see that?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Wow. What's the
This
red?
is, we're
Is that,
still trying to
yeah.
solve this mystery, but we're pretty confident we know what happened. It's going to be hard to figure this out, but basically what you're looking at is a flat mirrored skylight on top of a terrace that looks down into a food court. And we suspect, or at least I suspect, that this particular kingfisher saw the mirrored surface as water's surface. It was like a glistening lake surface. And it just made a dive as if it was going to forage for food into water, when it was in fact a mirrored skylight. So the interesting thing about this is this issue isn't limited to vertical glass. It can also be horizontal glass for certain species of birds that can trick the bird into believing it's diving into habitat. And in this case, it thought it was water.
Yeah.
And you can even see the impact mark on the glass where it hit.
Wow. Now that particular bird is even a different color than like the one that we had here. They're different varieties of belted kingfishers, or is this?
No, there's only one kind of kingfisher.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just the coloring in the photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That-
And this
Wow.
It's a, yeah.
You've really
So
taught
that-
us
that
too
was
to
a-
look
that
up
was a
when
first
you're.
for us to see that happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
So that's my little story. Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. And TJ,
So
thank
I
you
can
for
leave
sharing your
that share
beautiful.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Michael,
Yeah.
there's a question that asks, can you explain what ends up
Well,
trapping birds in light beams? And is it related to how their vision works? Do you want to answer it?
me?
Yes,
I can
you.
try. There's a couple of theories that bounce around about this, and the best way to sort of picture it in your mind is like a moth to a flame, as cliche as it may sound. It's quite similar to what is experienced by the bird. There's been a number of studies done that basically suggests that the bird's vision definitely has something to do with it, especially in inclement weather. And this is part of the reason why in some foggy conditions, it can disorient the bird. Apparently light that is present during foggy conditions goes into the water vapor, the water molecules in the fog. It isn't so much that the birds can't see because of the fog, it's how the light reacts in the water molecules in the fog that kind of creates almost like a strobe effect in the bird's vision and can disorient them. There's been other radar images that have tracked birds as they fly into a lit environment. So kind of like the World Trade Center beams of light, where they'll fly toward that light, pass through it, back into the darkness, but then they turn around and come back to that light source, because then they hesitate to go back into that that lit area. The bottom line is there's still a lot to learn here, including for the daytime. Looking into bird vision. And funny enough, this is a partnership that we struck with Western University. Brendan Samuels was on last couple of weeks ago. They're working on a study with us to better understand bird vision, to better understand how we can address these problems, primarily the daytime issue. Because this is something that hasn't been done for daytime. They haven't looked into the intricacies of bird vision to better understand what might be the best method to alert birds to the presence of glass. So that's only at its infant stages. But we still have a lot to learn here. But the bottom line is there's more than enough documentation out there that points to the fact that there is, for lack of a better term, a sense of attraction for birds in brightly lit environments. And the way you resolve that problem, and believe me, there's no other environmental issue as easily resolved as lights. You flick a switch, the problem can disappear, right? So there's no other, it's not like bringing a dead lake back to life or trying to grow a new forest back to life kind of thing. This can be resolved at the flick of a switch. And that's the message we always carry forward. Did that help a little bit?
Does that help, Anne?
Yeah, just
Sorry,
wanna,
was
I
trying to
don't
figure
think
out
I
how to
may not have
unmute
quite answered the
my
question.
audio. Yes, thank you. That's a very good good answer. Can I ask another question?
Yeah, are you guys still awake out there in the East? Are you okay with one more question?
Absolutely.
Aw, thanks. Yeah, go ahead, Anne. That's great.
So would you guys say, just based on your experience, that in our attempts to make our downtown a little bit more friendly, we have all this planting around the buildings. So there's the buildings themselves, and then there's all these trees that sort of get planted around the buildings, I think to make the buildings look better. But then that seems to attract the birds. So would you say that the more planting there is, the greater the hazard for the birds?
Paloma, you can answer.
There'll always be an attraction no matter where you put the greenery. And as Michael said earlier, we're huge advocates for planting native species. No matter what you do in terms of the greenery, the best thing you can possibly do is to treat the windows. And that way you don't have to worry about what plantings you put, how high they are, or anything like that. And this is something that, again, reverts back to the homeowner, where you've got all these people that are putting up feeders and bird baths and taking part in Project Feeder Watch. And they're doing all these great things because they want to watch the birds, but there's no point drawing the birds into your garden with all these beautiful, solar fountains and everything else, but your windows are not treated. You cannot have both. If you want the birds there and you want them to be safe, doesn't matter what you give them in terms of luxury food, you should still treat your window, and it should be an effective treatment, not just the one decal or the blinds drawn on the inside. If you care enough about them, then you want to do what is right for the birds. And I actually had a conversation with someone not too long ago that had mentioned that they had bought a house specifically because of its locale on a river. And they had a large picture window that was really what drew them to this house. And they were staying home because of the pandemic and were noticing more bird strikes. And they wanted something on their windows that would still allow them to have that view that they had when they first bought the house, yet still work for the birds. So there are products out there that will allow you to do that. You just have to look and see what you want to compromise with, how much you want to save the birds, what's more important, and work backwards from there.
Thank you. That's a good, thoughtful answer. I just have one last question for both of you. I was just curious about, so when you guys go out of town and you're visiting other places, do you find yourselves looking at buildings and evaluating them from that perspective?
Well,
My husband hates me
gosh, yeah.
Sorry. Oh, I totally get where you're coming from, Paloma, because I can't even watch Grey's Anatomy without cringing every time there's a commercial break and they show the entrance to the hospital. So I did not mean to interrupt you, but
No,
Michael had an interesting thing too. So once you're done, Paloma, I have to remind
Okay.
Michael, there's one thing I want him to expand on
for
for us too.
me, the phrase that I give our new volunteers is once you flap, you can't go back, because you can never view a window in quite the same way again once you know what a window can do. And you can walk around a building anywhere. And unfortunately, I've been on holiday in Florida. I went to Costa Rica and I looked at a building and I could see the little decals that they put on their windows, and they had put them there because their entire veranda was surrounded by hummingbird feeders, and there were hummingbirds absolutely everywhere. And I cringed when I saw the little decals because I knew that they weren't working. And like I say, my husband hates me because everywhere I go is good window, bad window, good window, bad window. And you can't help it.
Yeah.
That's me. Yeah, I cannot help it. So yes.
I'm with you on that. I didn't want to,
Michael.
I don't want to affect where you were going to go with your own answer, Michael, but at the end, whatever it is you're going to add, do you mind, without naming the building, do you mind just sharing with the group some of the types of work that you do that may or may not have included Calgary for what generally you might do to assess a building? And because I believe you did actually, you've done some work, and
Certainly.
yeah, that's great.
Oh, yeah. We've done a lot of work on this. In fact, Kathleen and I were talking last week about our bird safe building risk assessment. There's one thing that you can do that might make it a bit easier for you. On our birdsafe.ca website, you can link to our do-it-yourself risk assessment app. It asks, I think, 23 different questions. It has an algorithm in it, and it will spit out the result as to whether or not the window or facade you're looking at is either low risk, moderate risk, high risk, or lethal. And we're trying to impress upon people that any rating lethal must be treated. And let's say you're looking at your home and this assessment determines that 2 of your 10 windows on your home are lethal. Focus on those windows first to treat. Don't stop there, but start with those ones, right? But we found shortly after the 2 trials that we were involved in, the last one ended in 2013, that the floodgates opened where environmental consulting companies, building owners and operators, right down to homeowners, were looking for how they can effectively determine which of their windows or facades they should treat. And we developed this risk assessment protocol. It's called, as I said, it's called the Bird Safe Risk Assessment, Building Risk Assessment Program, and you have to be trained on it. It has over 470 different variables that are taken into consideration. We had all the different leading experts across North America, from Dr. Daniel Clem, Chris Shepard, Scott Loss, Steve Hager, right to here with people in Canada, from Chris Wadelis, Bob Alsop. Anyway, all these people contributed to developing this program. And you basically go through this process of answering questions like the total volume of glass on a facade, how reflective is it, how much vegetation is there, how close is that vegetation, and it takes into all these considerations and it spits out an answer once you answer all these questions. Now, that aside, it really isn't difficult to be able to look at a building facade and be able to tell if that building's more likely to be a lethal or high risk, or a moderate risk to low risk. And it's all a combination of, again, how much vegetation is there within 100 feet of that window or that facade, to is that facade made up of a combination of concrete and glass, or is it 98% glass? Is it tinted glass? Is it mirrored glass? Is it transparent glass? If it's transparent, Are you looking into a stark lobby, or are you looking straight through to the adjacent side to some vegetation on the other side? There's a lot of things that you have to train your eye to look for, and you'll soon very quickly be able to determine that window is going to be a problem without even picking up a bird in front of it. And so once you, as I said, once you train your eye and become more knowledgeable in what to look for, you'll be able to make these assessments on your own without even using an app.
One thing I
Did that
often
help?
wonder, that's amazing. And for the asker, I think that is awesome. Let us know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I answered yes. Thank you. I've often wondered, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. If I'm looking at a building that looks like it's got the huge reflection and other issues, could there be something that's invisible to us that's there? If you know what I mean? Like if there was something ultraviolet or something, if you're just looking at it with the naked eye, is there anything that there, something that we might be missing that could be there? I kind of think not, but I
Oh, I
think it would be obvious if it was there, but want to ask.
So sorry, just make sure, when you say it's there, I didn't catch what that it is.
I guess what I mean, like if like we've seen lots of buildings now and lots of glass, and getting an idea of where we see birds and
Right.
making assumptions. I don't want to ever make an assumption that that glass is not treated. Like you look at it, it looks totally untreated. You see reflections, you see a lot of things you just
Oh, I see.
described.
Gotcha.
Could there ever be something where there is a treatment that's in the glass or something that I wouldn't actually see that might be there? I would think
Right.
you'd see dots or
so-
you'd see lines if it was there. Does that make sense?
Definitely. One thing that is still sort of an emerging technology that needs to be perfected, but what the industry is gravitating toward is UV treatments, patterns on glass that are UV reflective, that the birds are supposed to see, but we're not. But there's some very particular parameters that have to be met in order for a UV coating to work properly. And I think it comes down to, it won't mean anything to you, and I have a hard time having it mean anything to me, but it's something about 300 to 400 nanometers of wavelength reflectivity that is that very particular level that only birds can see, that are very difficult to actually place as a coating onto a window. And when it is placed on the window, it has to be on the outside surface. And the moment you apply anything of that nature to the outside surface of a window, it has to withstand exposure to the elements and stay on that glass. And they haven't been able to figure out that yet. So the invisible fix that everyone's looking for isn't quite there yet. So the fact of the matter is, if you can't see a marker on a window, chances are the birds can't see it either. So if you're looking at a window and you're having a hard time seeing a marker on it, it's going to be ineffective anyway.
Okay.
So you have to be very bold with the marker, okay?
Okay, that helps a lot, actually. Thank you. And I have one last question, unless anybody pipes up with a super awesome extra last question. Marissa has asked, when determining how much danger a building possesses or poses for birds, particularly in a downtown setting, what would you say are the most important features to look for?
Paloma, do you want to answer that?
No, I'll let you.
Okay, so the most important feature, and let me make sure I have this right. The most important features to look for what would qualify as a bad example or a good example.
When determining how much danger a building poses, I think it's like probably what the greatest risk. What the greatest risk is if you looked at a building and you're like, "Ooh, look at that." That's what I'm taking. Is that right, Marissa?
Right. So provided, okay, so the worst case scenario is you're standing in front of a mirrored facade that's made up almost entirely of glass that is reflecting adjacent landscaping. And the more lush that landscaping is, the more birds will gravitate toward it, and the more likely they're going to see the reflection of that habitat. So, and funny enough, the two buildings that ended up in two separate lawsuits, both had lush landscaping that surrounded their structures, which combined with having highly reflective glass, almost like glass as if you're standing in your bathroom looking in your own mirror. And so all these birds being drawn into that area, exposed to that illusion of a safe passage, right? So I think those are the most obvious signs that if you believe that you could almost be fooled yourself by walking into this window, chances are the birds are going to have a much worse experience than you, right? So that's what I would suggest to look for.
So, and even on a mirrored surface like that, the dots or markings would still help, hey? It feels like you'd need a lot more on something that mirrored.
Unfortunately, there's no marker out there that's perfect. So, in the case of the feather friendly, we've been able to document up to an 80% reduction taking place with those markers. Now, again, it's not perfect, but you know, in the case of one of the buildings, one of the most horrifying moments that I've ever experienced was we stopped counting at over 500 birds over a 6-hour period at 2 buildings. And
sorry, can you repeat that number, please? That was how many? How many did you say?
We stopped counting at over 500 birds over a 6-hour period.
Wow.
At 2 buildings. Yeah, I know. The 2 buildings that ended up in the courts defending themselves. So, but I want to add something here because I know we're getting pretty close to finishing here. And I think it's really important to remember that there's always these moments, like I kind of touched on earlier, that are going to keep you going. And when Flap ended up in both of these trials, in the second trial, this was one of my kind of more memorable career moments. The judge was he was preparing to announce his decision. And he asked me to stand. And I didn't quite know what to expect. But he went about apologizing to me and Flap that there wasn't enough evidence available to convict this party in the courts. But he was so impressed by the professionalism, the dedication, the knowledge of all our volunteers and staff, and it was a moment that I was I don't know, proud of the organization and proud of enduring the years of having doors slam in your face. And then he introduced the law. This is where the law came about, that he piggybacked on the section of the Environmental Protection Act, where it became illegal to harm or kill a bird as a result of a collision with a window. So perseverance is the answer here, people. You got to persevere, and you got to, just don't listen to the naysayers and the people that are trying to kick you out the door, because good things come. You just got to stick to it. Okay.
That's fantastic. And did you want to add anything, Paloma?
Yeah.
You guys both have, I just have to tell you how grateful we are to both of you and for everything that you've done, like the story that you just told about being in the courtroom, things that we can't even imagine. Hope never ever to get into that situation. I can't imagine the stress and the work that went into that, and everything you've done to build these programs to get you to. It doesn't help with the mosquitoes, does it, Paloma?
What mosquitoes all the time.
And I loved what Paloma was saying too. Yeah, the mosquitoes. The what you were saying too, like when you're walking around and you once you flap, what is it? Once you flap, you can never go back because it's like you see glass everywhere. And I think that the volunteers could probably really agree with this too. Like my daughter is so tired now of driving with me because it's like I think I've got to find out from Paul where that one building is he knows in Calgary that has the commercial feather friendly on it, because I'm pretty sure I almost got in a car accident on McLeod Trail. Like I could think of those dots on a commercial building going downtown. So yeah, I can I feel your pain of seeing something. I can't even imagine more than 500 birds in 2 hours. And yeah, we're just really grateful. Did you want to add
It
anything
was
there, Paloma?
unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I can't imagine. Like it sounds like the one down in the States where the birds was that NASCAR where the birds were striking that one building just over and over and over again. It just were they striking while you were standing there too?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. In fact, I'll add this. This is another example of detachment. In front of the sections of this building, there were picnic tables, and people would come out to have their cigarette breaks or their coffee breaks or their lunch. And they plant themselves in front of these facades, sitting at these picnic tables. Birds were dropping all around them, in some cases dropping onto their laps or onto the picnic tables, onto their food. Now you would think in that moment, you would naturally be shocked, wondering what the heck's going on. But it was unbelievable the number of people that picked themselves up, moved to picnic tables away from the building, sat down at those picnic tables and carried on with their day. It was just mind-boggling watching that happen. And it really is a shocking, not a shocking, it's a painful reminder of one of the things that we're up against is the level of detachment that's out there. And it's what makes our job so difficult.
I think that people are treating it as normal too, like from seeing with that bird bot. What is it again, Paloma? The bird strike bot. I can't remember the exact handle on Twitter. But yeah, people are just, they see the bird, bird hit my window. It's just normal. I have not seen that they've changed something about that.
That's right.
And I'm sorry, Paloma, did you want to add something?
Please.
I feel like I've interrupted you twice.
No, I guess the only thing, if I was going to add anything, it would be addressing the volunteers, because we did a recent survey with our volunteers to look in to see how we want to move forward with it. And a lot of our volunteers, we have about a 90 to 95% retention rate with our volunteers, which from my understanding is very, very good for a nonprofit. And given the fact that the work that we do is frustrating, it's heartbreaking. I mean, there are days when you come home and cry, because I know a lot of my volunteers have said exactly that when they found a bird that they couldn't help or was alive and they knew it was beyond hope. It doesn't matter. I mean, there are days when you go home and cry. Mm-hmm. But I have to give volunteers credit, and the people that do this day in and day out and come back year after year, because they are making a difference. And if you are one of those people that you're wavering and you're not sure if this is for you, give it some thought. If you need to, step back and reevaluate, but know that what you are doing is actually making a difference. And collectively, I cannot say that enough. It's a team effort from everybody, whether it's a team effort with FLAP or with Calgary, or it's any other group. Everyone that's doing it is making a difference, and don't ever think that you're not. And that would be my takeaway message.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Well, I certainly feel super grateful for our volunteers and for all of your volunteers and the ones that in Baltimore and Denver and just around the world that are spreading more and more every day too, which is just great. And you've started with that inspiration all to begin with. Oh, wow. It is getting late, especially in the East. we should let you guys go and see your families again. And we just would like to again express our gratitude to you for your time tonight, hanging out with us on our evening for learning, and a bit of just togetherness at this very strange time in the world, with some like-minded people. And it's really truly an honor to have your thoughts and your kind words and your stories and your wisdom. So on behalf of everybody at Calgary Migratory Species Response Team, thank you both so much for everything. We truly are grateful.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. And we look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you. Us too.
Definitely
Yes.
want to build on that. Definitely.
Well, and we've got lots of creative volunteers too who are just hanker to do all kinds of stuff. So we'll get that organized, definitely, and do more.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody
Yeah.
on Facebook who's there with us too. So we'll see you really soon. And yeah, I'll stop the live feed now and thank everybody very much.